how to support someone in need from active listening to crisis intervention. Um, it's not too long, so it's about 15 slides. Um, so the objectives are active listening, what it is and how to do it. Learn to offer validation, authenticity, positivity, and supportive solutions. Avoid judgment, advice giving, and or minimization, and identifying when someone may be in a crisis situation. Um, what is active listening? Essentially, listening is hearing what people are saying, literally hearing the sounds that someone is making. It requires passive participation with little effort on your part, kind of like this form until somebody asks questions and we start talking. Um, Active listening, on the other hand, is understanding information provided to you with involvement from your body and mind. Oftentimes, this is reflected by, agreeing with what people are saying, taking notes, typing information that's being heard, and active participation with conscious effort on concentration and genuine interest in what it is you're listening to. In order to be a good active listener, you must truly be present with that person. As a therapist, I do this pretty much all day long with everyone. And as a mom, I try to do it sometimes, but it doesn't work often. As a wife, I do that too. And then with friends, just out in the community or with family, I listen. I do my best to kind of be present with them, not be on my phone, not be distracted doing something else, whether it's on my phone or watching TV or stuff like that. That's not active listening. That would be more of like that passive listening stuff. Um, you have to learn to attend to what a person is saying, so you filter out what matters most here. Um, Understand what a person is saying by the words that they're using, by looking at their body language, listening to what they're saying, by the tone of their voice, by their cadence, um, and then responding appropriately to all that. So you respond appropriately by delivering verbal or nonverbal responses. For me, it's typically more nonverbal. I get pretty passionate when I listen to people talking, and then when it's my turn to talk, I use my hands. Even here, I use my hands. I lean in so I can make sure I'm hearing whatever whoever I'm listening to is saying. Um, and then over the years of being a therapist, I've had to learn to control my face because oftentimes my face will respond before I may verbally respond, and it might be contradictory. So that's not helpful. Um, Also, another way to respond appropriately verbally would be like paraphrasing or asking valuable, open, reflective questions. Also, memory. You must be able to recall information that a person shares or has shared with you. This helps build rapport. It helps enhance the relationship, both platonic relationships, professional relationships, intimate relationships. Um, when you're able to actively listen to someone, it creates new ways for you to approach different issues or challenges, not only for them, but for you. It helps you see things from a different perspective. It helps them see things from a different perspective or a different lens that they maybe didn't even consider. It also assists with verbal de-escalation. I don't know how many times people have been in conversations with one another, and there might be a difference in opinions, and the conversation gets super heated. And there has to be at least one person who's can like de-escalate a situation, and it's usually the person who's actively listening that does that. Also, when you demonstrate active listening, it makes people feel like they matter because you're doing all these things, right? The second objective was breaking down validation, authenticity, positivity, and supportive solutions. Validation is huge. When someone comes to you with a problem or an issue or something going on, validation is simply the act of letting someone know that you see and understand their perspective. You do not have to fully understand their problem or even provide them with a solution. You just have to recognize that they are in distress. And sometimes simply saying something as like, "Hey, I get it. That really sucks." Or, "Wow, that sucks that you're in that situation." Or that you're feeling right now, you're feeling angry and frustrated. Just, saying that to someone is super validating, and it lets them know that you recognize what they're feeling. The second one was authenticity. Um, Authenticity comes through when you stop searching for perfection. A lot of times, I know when people, like for me, when people come to therapy, they want like a solution or they think they want a solution. And then we get to talking about it, and I don't typically offer solutions, but I offer them kind of feedback on what they're saying and help guide them in a way that they can find their own solution for it. So that's kind of what authenticity is stop searching for the perfect thing to say, like, be yourself. Go with what feels normal or genuine for you. If someone's coming to you because they have a problem or because they need some additional insight, they're coming to you for a reason. And that reason is so that you can offer them kind of validation and authenticity and all these other components that we're going to go through. And the third part is bringing positivity or proactively. This doesn't mean that you have to live in like this la la land of, picture perfect everything, but it does mean that you offer them a different perspective on things that they might not see. A lot of times people come and they come to therapy or friends and family, they'll come and say, "Hey, Monique, this and this is happening in my life." And I have to take a moment and figure out what is positive about what's happening in their life. I have to keep them focused on the current situation and not let them fall down the rabbit hole of shit we all know so well, and highlight their strengths that are specific to them and related to that problem. Supportive solutions. Supportive solutions basically mean providing guidance that will not set people up for failure. We live in a world where the world, society, some of our jobs even set us up for failure. So there's no need that we do it to one another. It's good to ask people, when they come to you for whatever they come to you. I always ask people, are you coming for comfort or do you want me to offer you a solution? For me, that kind of sets the stage. I do that in therapy also if it's like a new client. I typically tell them, hey, this is what you can expect in therapy. And then when we get down into the grind of things, I'll ask them, are you here in therapy, for comfort, or are you looking for a solution? That helps me set the tone for them and helps them know what they can expect from me. Um, I also recommend asking people reflective questions like, it sounds like this has happened before. How'd you get through it the last time? This helps people think about, like, okay, this really has happened to me before. It's not the first time, and I've gotten through it. Or if it's a situation where it has not happened before, another question that you can ask is, okay, when you were faced with, XYZ dilemma, how did you get through it before? How did you prevent from falling down that rabbit hole? Or how did you get out of that rabbit hole? Unless their solution to a problem puts them or others in harm's way, then it's typically better off to support instead of pointing out flaws. So I'll touch on like putting people in harm's way in a couple more slides here. The next part of this is avoiding judgment, advice giving, or minimization. I don't know how many people have ever gone to talk to someone, and the first thing that you're given is, like that side eye, or when I said earlier, sometimes my face responds before, I verbally respond, and it's two different things. Um, or advice giving. I do a lot of advice giving with my family when, they don't want it. Sometimes they just want me to shut up and listen for comfort. Um, or minimization. A lot of people, including myself, have been in that position where, we've come to others for assistance, and we feel like what we're saying is minimized or less important. I'm just gonna go through those. Being judgmental, how to avoid being judgmental is it sounds pretty easy, but it's sometimes really hard. Um, by the time someone comes to you for help with anything, they've already gone down their rabbit hole of self-judgment. They've already, gone through the list that feels never ending of why they couldn't get something done, why they didn't do it right, why they're in that situation again. So they don't need you to add to it. Oftentimes, when people come to you, they don't want constructive criticism. Um, they don't want opinions on where they went wrong or what they could have done differently. They've done this already to themselves when they were down that rabbit hole. So it's super important to be mindful of your tone of voice, your facial expression, your body language, um, and just listen. And that would probably be a good, you know, part for you to ask them, do you want me to listen for comfort or for solutions? So then you know kind of what they expect from you. How to avoid giving advice or lecturing. Well, many think that they're helping others while telling them how to fix a problem. It's usually unwanted, and it often keeps people in their rabbit hole of negativity. It keeps them in that loop of that fucked up narrative that we tell ourselves all the time. Um, if they've moved from like the bitch fest or the venting fest to getting over the hump, a better approach is to use those reflective questions to guide them to their own solution. Even when people come to therapy, they think that I have like this wondrous book of knowledge or wisdom or something or advice that I can give them, but I don't. Unless someone asks me, hey, Dr. Monique, can you tell me what I need to do? I won't. And even when they do ask me that, I don't tell them outright. I kind of go through a reflective questions through this whole active listening process and help them figure out exactly what they need. Because at the end of the day, you know yourself best. So the person coming to you knows themselves best, and it's your job as their listener in that moment to encourage them to look inside. And then the last one is minimizing the person or their issue, saying things like it could be worse, or at least you have a job, or at least you have a house, at least you have a car, is the worst thing that you can do to someone who comes to you for anything. What this does is it denies that person's experience and implies that they shouldn't feel bad about whatever they are feeling. Instead, trying some of those validating statements to demonstrate to them that you recognize their feelings and it's okay to have them would be a lot better and go a lot longer for them than you basically reinforcing that negative narrative again that they've already told themselves. Um, Number four, the fourth objective was identifying a crisis situation. A crisis is different for everyone. I learned this many years ago when I used to work in a psychiatric facility and I was in part of the intake crew. Um, People would come in of all ages, and a crisis for everyone was very different. It could be something as kind of superficial as like I failed my exam. There was a lot of, I lived in Tucson, Arizona, and the University of Arizona was there. And we had a lot of students that would come in from the University of Arizona who were like in full crisis mode because they failed an exam or they failed the final. They were on their path to go, you know, to some other fancy college or fancy career, and they thought that that one test or that one exam, that one experience would prevent that from happening. So a crisis is different for everyone, and I want members on here today to just realize that what might not be a crisis to you might be a crisis to me, and vice versa. Um, the term or the definition that I use as a crisis is a sudden and unwanted situation that can threaten your integrity, your reputation, and ultimately your life. And again, your life can mean very different things. Um, Identifying what a crisis is to someone is the first step. Second, identifying any kind of suicidal, self-harming, homicidal statements or gestures, or even the opposite, a complete display of calmness, especially after they announce a crisis. Unfortunately, I've had clients who've completed suicide and they've come to me and we've gone through sessions and they've appeared okay. They've appeared safe. They have a safety plan. They have protective factors. Protective factors are usually people or support networks outside of them that they stay alive for, if you will. And then all of a sudden, they'll be calm. They won't display any kind of worry about anything. And for me, those are red flags. So if I had a client that say I had a client that I was seeing for the last 8, 10 weeks, they were coming once a week. And every week it was something new, it was a new challenge. And that ninth or 10th week that they come, we sit here and I'm like, hey, how's it going? We chalk it up and they tell me everything's good. I bought a house, I bought this, I did that. I'm going on vacation. Those are super red flags for me. And I encourage anyone to kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're having conversations with people and they come to you and they say, hey, you know, I'm feeling some type of way. And all of a sudden it changes, like from one day to the next or one moment to the next. I want that to be a red flag for you. I want you guys to help that person reach out for help or sit down with them and ask them, hey, where are you at right now? Like what's going on? How can I help you? How can I support you? Depending on where you're at, there's lots of different suicide text hotlines. They're available all over social media, online. I have a PowerPoint that includes like links to these, so I can send them out to find out the support, and then they can send it out to whoever. Um, and then also on the Pineapple Support website, there's a bunch of different resources. And then just reminders about active listening in general, as well as crisis intervention, is pay attention and show that you're actively listening with verbal and nonverbal language. Give validation and positive reinforcement with supportive solutions or appropriate comfort. And avoid criticism, judgment, advice giving, and or minimizing. And that's the length of my presentation. I'm sorry if I went really fast. I was really nervous.
Don't you worry, I love it. You keep your mic on there, Monique, so we can have a chat if it's okay. I've got a few things that I've actually myself have been dealing with a person at the moment that's a good friend who's exactly like what you've just said, and they've yo-yoed between being super happy one day and then super negative the next day, and they're just not really maintaining sort of just an open and positive outlook or managing to deal with what they are facing. And so, I mean, I've been trying to look into, because I've done a little bit of counseling reading, and obviously with watching a lot of these webinars and things, and a lot of presentations that you've done exactly yourself, to be fair. So you always said about, try and be very like show empathy to anyone that you come across, so that you can sort of, they are aware of how you feel, and you are open to acknowledging how they feel. It's about I've been trying to make sure that not only am I present, but as you say, you listen to what they're saying, and then you can sort of summarize back to them what they've said to you, so that they don't feel that you're just a vacant ear, effectively. I find a lot of people out there will sit and you feel like you're listening to someone, or you're talking to someone, and you hope that they're responding. But in actual fact, when you come away, it feels like an empty time, or like a waste of opening up and trying to present to them, because they're not responsive to it. So with this one person I've got in mind, and what I've been trying to do is what you in one of your previous webinars, you said about trying to give open-ended questioning. So when you find someone that's not happy, or doesn't come across as being happy in themselves, that you, instead of just saying, "Are you okay?" most people will just be like, "Yeah, fine." So if you do an open-ended question, so how did that make you feel, or what happened, and could you elaborate a little bit more on what that then made you want to do afterwards, so that the respondee isn't then just having to give you a one-word sort of brush up answer. I found that with my friend that opened them up a lot more, so that they could then actually turn around and say, well, actually, no, at that point it made me feel like this. And then you can then sort of get a bit of a better idea of what's actually how they're coming across, and how they should be, how you can then respond to them in a better and sort of more open way. But I don't know if you've had any experiences on people, when someone you do try to help may not be responsive. Obviously we will get your slides from you, so we can put these up and show the resources that you have available. But is there any sort of recommendations on how you would say, okay, so if someone snaps at you and says, like, "I don't want your help, sod off," is there any way that you can sort of you can respond in like a polite way to make sure that that they still know that you're present, still know that they have the access? Or
yeah, so that's when I typically say, like, okay, I want to, so I'm going to use you. Hey, Kelly, I want to be here to support you. What can I do to support you? And a lot of times they'll say, nothing. You can't do anything. Okay, well, then I'm just going to sit here. This
yeah,
is my number. You can text me when you want to talk. Is there something that I can do to make you feel more comfortable? And it happens. It happens even in therapy. People will decide, they'll come into therapy by whatever way they find me. And by the time they sit here on the couch, or we have our first virtual session, after I give them my blurb about kind of my therapy style, they'll say, okay, I don't know why I'm here. I just did it because in that moment when I requested it, I was in a really bad place.
yeah. But
And
it's all,
yeah,
with that sort of situation, though, it's like they're the sort of hard nuts to crack, aren't they? They're the ones that are just like, right, well, I was really motivated at that moment. Now I feel stronger in myself. But what we all need to realize is anything that happens in our lives can be a traumatic experience in one way or another. And it may not be really open and sort of on the top of the surface, actually thinking, right, oh, that's bubbling now, it's a problem. So as we are all probably on the panels and are here involved, we are pro to like therapists lovers. So it's good to talk, it's good to communicate, it's good to have interactions with other people, because of sometimes those emotions that we have that sit and dwell and are not really dealt with can rear up at a later date in a bigger way. I find it's trying to hold that like sort of unconditional positive regard, isn't it? It's like trying to make sure that people are feel that you are present, and you are active with them. Um, are there any ways, or have you ever had any experiences in ways when, you know, it's, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I'm terrible with this because I'm trying to think of ways that I could explain it without using a specific circumstance.
Mhm.
But you know, if someone comes to you and they are, you know, seen as a high, what you would think is a high risk, you know, so someone who is threatening to take their life or do something like that, or to do something that's sort of beyond what any sort of general social helper would be able to do, you know, because a lot of people out there will be someone's like go to just friendly ear. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a friend. It could be, you know, your dentist. It could be the guy that you get your local takeaway from, sort of thing. You know, they're the ones that you sometimes offload on, you know, and they don't really know that you don't really know you're doing it, but they're your sort of network. And so if someone then was to take the extreme, what, you know, we always say you've got to go straight to contact like someone of a higher authority, you know, emergency services wise. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on how people could go about doing those items, and you know how it would be best to respond?
So, like, typically, what happens if you're like faced with a high risk situation? I always encourage people to call whichever mental health. There's always a mental health crisis line everywhere, both in the States and out of the States. Call that crisis line first and let them know, like, hey, I have a friend. Because oftentimes what happens is everyone, even here, we think that, oh, we're going to call the police and we're going to send them to the emergency room. The emergency room does nothing for anyone. Not even if you're having like a physical emergency, especially right now, nowadays, with people getting sick all the time. But if you're having behavioral or emotional or mental crisis, they don't do anything for them. They don't even give them medication anymore. They send you away. And if someone's that high risk, imagine being sent away.
Mm.
That's a prime example of someone minimizing what that person's feeling in that moment. So then they go down that rabbit hole of shit again. Um, so I would encourage you to reach out to whichever mental health support line is wherever you are. Let them know what's going on. Oftentimes, they'll pair you with someone. They'll have like case managers online 24 hours or on text or on social media. And they'll pair you with someone in your area. They'll find out more information about this individual. If it's something where they are a danger, like actively a danger to themselves or to others, that would be the only time that I would say you call law enforcement in your area and say, um, hey, Monique has firearms at home. She knows how to use them. She came to me right now and she was really, really upset. I'm afraid she's going to go home and do something. And that's all.
And it is always the best way, isn't it? It's like if you have any concern, reach out. You know, it's better to actually reach out and advise someone of something, or like speak to someone else and get a second opinion, rather
Yeah.
than to sit in silence, because you never know what may or may not happen. You know, I would rather be bombarded by people saying, call this person, do that person, than to be left alone. You know, there's a saying about a man waving from sea, and he sort of, everybody think from the sounds at the beach and thinks he's waving to say hi, but he's actually drowning. He's not. Is so it's like, you know, if someone shows you any red flags, then do investigate. You know, it doesn't have to be someone close to you. You know, you can see it everywhere and every day, can't you? But
Yeah.
you know,
I,
with
I,
regard,
oh,
also,
sorry. I was just going to say, I always err on the side of caution. Even like in my personal life, I err on the side of caution. If I have a close family or friend, or even like a friend of a friend, we do a lot of barbecues at my house and we host a lot because we have a huge backyard. So if there's somebody there that I don't even know, that's like a family member of a friend or friend of a family member or whatever, and they start, you know, they have a trigger word that I hear, like, I'm really depressed, or I just lost my job and this has happened, and it kind of snowball effect. I usually find them later on and ask them, "Hey, are you okay? Can I get you anybody to talk to?" And I err on the side of caution 100% of the time.
And it's recognizing those sort of trigger items, isn't it? It's like there's a lot of things that people will say to you that, there are the stereotypical things that, so someone's lost someone, someone's had a breakup, someone's struggling work wise or what have you. You just need to make sure is if someone is openly or actively being super silent or and closing themselves off, or they are instead being like over sort of zealous about trying to open up to people. I do find
Yeah.
as well, like I'm quite bad because I'm quite chatty. So I will literally be like, right, okay, and I'm just going to offload to anyone, so and sometimes it can be a bit much, but no, it's always try and reach out if you are aware of someone who is in, or you think someone's in uh, a problem space, then feel free to contact like ourselves, or you can contact any of your local services or social support groups.